So I guess the thing to do is both of our chairmen are really, I mean, they're amazing speakers. They do talk a lot, though. That's one thing we have to say. So I'm going to ask one of them to come up and just say thank you to anyone who I didn't think of. So which one is it going to be, guys? They're both coming up here. They both want to do it. All right, so you know what? So I'll introduce you to Dr. Gerald Meyer first.
I'm Roberto's protege. But it's Roberto and I started this journey really around
1997.
96. I got a call around 12 o'clock at night that it was from somebody who was kind of breathless. But I wasn't divorced yet, so I thought I'd listen, you know, and then so I didn't hang up. And he said it was a guy, and calling from Harvard. And I said, holy smoke, this is really getting more interesting by the moment. And I think at the point, I don't know if there's anything else involved here, what happened, how this happened, what he had for lunch or dinner, I don't know what other substances, I have no idea. But he had some kind of apparition that either he was Marcantonio or Marcantonio entered him or I was Marcantonio. I don't know, something was going on, but it was very profound. I mean, I said, like, you know, it's not like you can't leave somebody like that hanging. This is like you're like on that Samaritan line or something. You know, you got to hold on. You know, yes, there is a meeting you can go to. Something you got to, you know, you can't let it go. So I said to myself, we started talking. That was 1997, and we haven't stopped talking since. Roberto puts up with me. He's an angel. I'm telling you, my father used to say to Louis, how do you put up with him? I wish my father was alive. He would say the same to you. But in any case, so then we started, and we really, I think that was the turnaround. We worked together, and Roberto was head of Fieri, wonderful organization of young Italian-American professionals. I think it's really like a matchmaking deal. They put this little, you know, in any case, but so in any case, it's not like speed dating. It's more like Italian-American speed dating. It takes forever. So in any case, so the idea, so the idea is here that we started in, and finally, like that somebody really was interested, and I had written an article about Marcantonio's funeral. I think all of it started, there's a funny way with that article, and Roberto, people liked that article. Oh my God, and Roberto used to get like 100 copies of it, and it would be in like a cardboard box, and he carried them around places, like, and give them to people. I said, I better hang out with this guy. Like, nobody else has paid attention, you know? And then we kept working on one thing and another thing and another thing, and involved with Annette T. Rubenstein, you know, the editor of I Vote My Conscience, and we got close, and more meetings, more and more affairs. And then we organized something that was absolutely spectacular, and which I don't think has been replicated. In fact, since the memorial that was read by a wonderful guy from the Puerto Rican Independence Party, Mr. Ramos, Eric, is from where Gilberto Concepcion de Gracia said those beautiful words. It was at this big memorial meeting in 1956, I believe. And since that meeting, where there were 3,000 people in Manhattan Center, the next large meeting was really the one that we had organized. And it was like where everything just fell into place. We had it at NYU, is where Mark got his law degree. And he had also, because of his connection with Cavello in high school, when he got to NYU, he helped found a Circolo Italiano for the Italian students. And they still exist. The organization still exists. They paid for all the food. This is how you run things. This is why you do it in the cemetery. You don't have to pay rent. No, you paid for all the food. Then NYU, they gave us this beautiful hall. And like all the stars were lining up. The Italian American Historical Association was having their convention in New York at that time. The Calandra Institute, they needed something, you know, they needed us. Anyway, whatever it was, everything fell into place. And we had the most wonderful people that came forward to speak. And Freddie Ferrer said, and I've heard this from so many people, Jose Serrano, I've heard it from, how their mother talked about Marcantonio. It's interesting, how much he helped them and so on. I've heard this over and over again. it went into the next generation of hearing that from grandparents and parents and so on. And, well, we've been working on this ever since. And I think this is another stage, and I think we're getting wonderful results. All the members of the Vito Marcantonio Forum are doing creative work on this topic. Lulu has integrated Cavello and Marcantonio into her performances. She's done research now on the letters from the constituents and is dramatizing the letters from constituents. Roberto has 2 articles on this topic, one which will be published. Dave Giulio, who does our videos, which you really want to find on YouTube, the one from last year is called Remembering a Hero. It's a gem, an absolute gem. And Dave had a published article on Marcantonio. Adam is the webmaster for VitoMarcantonio Gil Fagiani has written poems and so on. All of this coming, generating at our work. So while we're organizing public events, people individually have taken up projects of various kinds. I think we're going to do a museum exhibition, by the way. That's will happen, and it's been good. It's been good for us. We've got to know each other better, and we like each other. That's good. That's helpful. And if anyone is interested in helping us and joining with us, we would like that very much too. Roberto, please say something. Thank you.
Jerry always embellishes that story about how he and I met. It's worse, right? Except the part about the apparition, right? Exactly.
I left stuff out. The real stuff.
I first learned about Vito Marcantonio in an African American history class about how he took a stand against the poll tax and lynching. And I thought that was very interesting, and so my conclusion was, at that point, interesting, Italian American, advocating for African Americans. I was a big, ethnic and racial bridge builder. So I said, this is a very cool factoid and a very cool name, right? Vito Marcantonio, right? And then then months later, a friend of mine had asked me to see his photo slideshow presentation at an after-school program. At a end of summer program. So I go to see it with him and his mother, and at the end of the program, he says, "Listen, I have to clean up here. Do you mind if you take the subway with my mother halfway home?" She was Caribbean American, right? So we get off at 125th Street and we walk around, and at some point she says, I think that was Vito Marcantonio's office. He was such a good person. He helped everybody, right? And he even helped me, and she had a story about that. And she actually did share that story in January of 1998. Anyway, so again, I take this course in Columbia, African American history class. Months later, this lady has this anecdote. Then in 1988, Marcantonio reappears in my life in an article by Maria Lorino in the Village Voice about how Mario Cuomo was falling short of the Italian-American progressivism standard that was set by LaGuardia, Marcantonio, and Leonard Cavello. She even mentions Cavello in the article. Oh, interesting, take note, And then in 1992, I go to a friend's wedding in California. I didn't expect him to invite me to his wedding. Like when my mother said, "Listen, you got an invitation to a wedding in California," I said, "Well, David Smith got married a year before. Who would be inviting me to a wedding in California?" It was a guy named Steve Kansian. He was half Italian. We were sort of involved in community activism at Columbia. So I can't believe it. She read this invitation correctly. I'm actually going to a wedding in California. I go. So Steve and I and all his friends, the day before the wedding, we hang out. We're kind of like just treating him the night before his wedding. He goes, "Roberto, I'd like to tell you about a management style by someone who would see everybody for a few minutes before referring them to his staff, right? So that everybody felt connected with him." So that's an interesting management style. Who are we talking about? Vito Marcantonio. You too? I keep hearing this name. So it felt like, you don't find your mission finds you, right? So that's like now happening between 1986 and 1992. So I have So 1986, I was in college at the age of 10, right? So I was just, I'm very young for my age, right? So then in 90, so after he comes back from his honeymoon in 93, he mails me the book. So it was amazing that somebody was following through. It was Gerald Meyer's book, Vito Marcantonio, Radical Politician. I read the book. I'm like, oh, we got to get Jerry Meyer as a speaker for Fieri Manhattan. I was president of Fieri. I had just gotten accepted into the Kennedy School. I couldn't organize the event. So for 2 years, I was asking the leadership, get Jerry as a guest speaker, and it didn't happen. So then in 96 is when Jerry gets that fateful phone call from me saying, listen, I'm really admiring your work. I might have told you the coincidences, and that came across as, me being on drugs maybe. I don't think it was midnight, but, it might have been like, because I don't call people after 10 o'clock. So, so Jerry, it was probably 9:30, okay? So then he sends me an article, which was not in its final draft yet, but it was the article about the funeral, right? Italian Harlem throws its biggest funeral, right? And there was that piece that I guess I didn't see in the book, but I saw in the article that I think the article mentions that W.E. Du Bois was an honorary pallbearer along with Leonard Covello, right? And then that Paul Robeson gave this eulogy, and I said, this is just amazing. The people that other people already know about, how people already know these other people as a frame of reference, and they don't know Marcantonio. So we then got together, and so in 1997, we began to organize an event that at first was going to take place in 97, but then got postponed to 98 and built a tremendous amount of momentum. And I don't think I told Jerry this, but at the time, we were on the phone every single day organizing this event. And not only was it the biggest event ever about Vito Marcantonio, but it was also the biggest event ever that Italian Americans really organized, because it was 400 people. The food was kind of the sideshow, right? And the main event was the cultural and historical event. And it was sponsored by 4 main sponsors, including NIAF and Calandra Institute and the Casa Italiana of NYU and the Italian American Historical Association, and with 35 co-sponsors and endorsers. These people brought everybody out. It was like the Ed Sullivan show of like Vito Marcantonio. Kind of really started to bring him out again, and then we have the reprinting of I Vote My that led to the reprinting of I Vote My Conscience, walking tours of East Harlem. There were those boxes of that article. I gave one to Morgan. Morgan, could you just wave for everybody, right? I gave a copy of that article to Morgan Powell, right? And his reaction, huh? It's 10 years ago. It's our 10th or 11th anniversary of me handing over that article to Morgan. And Morgan's reaction was almost like a universal reaction among everyone, but especially among among African Americans who had never heard. Basically, Morgan said, I can't believe this. I'm so inspired by this article. I can't believe I've never heard of this guy. And a lot of people have had that reaction. I can't believe I've never heard of this guy. So we had the successful event, and now we have launched. This organization has given people an opportunity to showcase and develop the skills. I've always wanted to move into a career where I use more of my right brain, so this is giving me an opportunity to write and act and so on. And Jerry mentioned how we've showcased other people's skill sets. We thank you all for coming, because this was a very important anniversary. Even for those people who didn't come, I appreciate the fact that all of these postings got shared and sent on Facebook. I'm on Google Alerts, so my Google Alerts were coming in like sparks were flying from my computer, so the word got out. So I'd like to thank all of you. I think this is it, and I think Adam or other, will tell you that we are now going to be putting pebbles and flowers on the tombstone of Marcantonio as a symbol of our respect And then if anybody can stick around, we're going to go to LaGuardia's site and elsewhere. So, Adam, I give it back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry and Roberto. Thank you. You know, I wanted them to come up to say some thank yous for people I forgot. They tell us their life stories. I didn't know it was going to be like that, but it was great information. We thank you for that. And the last thank you, very last one, is for Woodlawn Cemetery and especially the Woodlawn Conservancy, who's very helpful in making this all happen. And Susan Olson, who's right over there, is going to take over the tour. We can applaud for her. Susan Olson. But before we do that, as Roberto was saying, everybody come up. If you got flowers, put flowers down. You could put a stone up here. And that's it. Thank you for coming down. We'll see you next year. Same event.
Very good. So you cut the volume first. Oh, wow. It's on full blast, huh? No, it's not. I know you missed a photo opportunity with Vito. They asked me who to interview. They said you can only interview one person. That guy right there. It's and what was good is I'm from Austin. So the Bronx connection. Nah, you're the guy. I got it. Good thing. So good. Thank you, man. Very much. And wait, hold it. No, just look toward me a little bit. So I'm sorry.
Jerry, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Anton Evangelista. I'm a friend of, I don't know if you know Daniela Joseph. She mentioned me to you, and it's funny because when she told me about it,
I haven't seen her.
yeah, I said, I know Roberto. Because she mentioned Roberto's name, not knowing that I knew Roberto. So, because I'm doing a documentary on